GB's here of Into the Squared Circle podcast. Welcome to the YouTube experience of Into the Squared Circle podcast. As I mentioned 50 billion times, podcast. Yes, I'm available on all major podcast outlets. So wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, I'm on there. Like Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and so many more. So go ahead and hit the subscribe button right now on the podcast outlets. And of course, you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe down here. You're ready here. I got your attention. Subscribe this son of a gun. Hit the like. Hit the bell button so you never miss an episode every time I release one, right? Okay, so what we're going to talk about. By the way, this is in a fancy studio. In a fancy Los Angeles. No, I'm not. I'm in my own house basement, okay? I crap everywhere. That's okay. It's not a big deal. Again, a huge wrestling fan here who has no money, just like you, probably watching, has zero little money in her pocket, like myself. You can do what you got to do, right? Do what you got to do. Yes, on this podcast, we will talk about AEW Dynamite. Two major things happen, which we'll talk about. The first one, by the way, Dynamite on May the 10th of 2023 edition, to be exact. The first one, Tony Khan made a surprise appearance on the show last night as the time recording this podcast. He has announced that he will make a huge announcement next Wednesday for the next Dynamite. So we will talk about what's the big announcement. Most of us, marks, smart fans, wherever the hell you want to call us, we kind of somewhat know what it's going to be. We will still talk about it, right? That's coming up in a couple days, so we'll still talk about it. And then the second thing, can't count. Second thing, it is the main event of Dynamite, which would happen this past Wednesday, and the steel cage match between Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley. A major turn of events. I won't spoil it if you haven't seen it yet. We will talk about that on the show. So two things we'll talk about, of course, as always. So welcome to the YouTube experience. I don't know why I'm doing this. Maybe you enjoy my beautiful face, my beautiful cut six-pack abs. Yeah, I probably just turned you away. I just scared you off. By the way, I do have a secondary YouTube page and podcast. A lesson and headbanging podcast if you're a fan of rock, hard rock, and heavy metal. You can tell we're in an AC/DC shirt right now. I got so much crap down here, music stuff. I'm a huge fan of rock and heavy metal. From the late 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s up to today, modern rock and heavy metal. I listen to all, maybe. Again, check it out. A lesson and headbanging podcast which is now available on all major podcasting outlets. And it's available on social media platforms, just like this podcast. Into the Squared Circle is available on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Instagram. So 5 social media platforms. Same thing with a Listen Headbanging podcast. 5 social media platforms. Okay? All right, I'm going to shut up. And the commercials. Let's talk about AEW Dynamite. The two major things that went down. Right? There's the camera. No. All right, let's talk about the two things on Dynamite fans are clamoring about. Okay, I don't know what the hell that was, but if you're watching on YouTube, you get to see my beautiful face. If you're listening on the podcast, you're best off not watching on YouTube. I'm just saying. I'm being honest here. Okay, let's talk about number one, the topic about last night on Dynamite, May the 10th, which was live on TBS in 2023. I get the dates incorrect because who knows who will watch this in a year or beyond in the infantry. Okay, Tony Khan made a surprise announcement on Dynamite yesterday that, well, not a surprise announcement, but like a surprise appearance. Like, hey, hello, my name is Tony Khan. I'm going to make an appearance next week on Dynamite. And I'm going to have a huge announcement. So huge that it will change AEW landscape. Now, if you watch Dynamite, we seen some notable people walking down the hall and entering through Tony Khan's office. That's prior to the Tony Khan appearance on television. So the first person we seen walking down the hallway backstage was the Bulgarian brute, Miro. God put me on here to be a pro wrestler. You know Miro's gimmick. Miro was seen backstage entering into Tony Khan's office. How often do we see a backstage segment of Tony Khan office with his name Tony Khan on the side of it? You know something's up when you have a backstage segment watching a wrestler go into his office. Just like the WWE, you see a backstage segment knocking on the door, walking in is Vince McMahon to the side, or there's Triple H on the side. So how often do we see a segment where there's an outside backstage scene of walking to Tony Khan's office? You know there's something up. We'll talk about that shortly. The second person that just happened to walk right into Tony Khan's office was no other than former AEW former AEW Women's Champion, get that correct, Thunder Rosa. Obviously, she's been doing commentary for the Hispanic side and the commentary team. But yes, she entered Tony Khan's office. Now, let's press forward and move over a little bit to the future here. Tony Khan went in on live television last night and announced that he will make a huge announcement next Wednesday on Dynamite that could be changing the landscape. Okay, now we're putting the pieces together. Now, if you're a dirt sheet mark like myself that follow all the dirt sheets, and you kind of figure it out, it's maybe the new AEW show, Collision, could be in full effect soon. They have to make announcements soon, because if they're planning on doing this right here in Chicago, by the way, this is right here. If you watch it on YouTube, I have a Chicago Cubs hat on my head. Go Cubs if you're a baseball fan. But yes, if they're planning on doing a Chicago show at the United Center, if this rumor is true, they need to get these tickets on sale, because we're less than a month away from this bad boy going launch. As in, these tickets might go on sale next Friday, maybe. And that's if all of this is all true. Now, maybe we'll get a new TV show called Collision. Maybe we'll get a draft. I don't know if we'll have a draft split. Maybe Tony Khan will just start dividing the locker rooms right off the bat. We don't know how this is going to work. Chris Jericho mentioned that Adam Cole has a a court order where he must not be in the same building with Chris Jericho. So could we see an Adam Cole and Chris Jericho split up? Maybe. That could be another potential clue right there. Separating the locker room. What happened to Pac, the leader of the Death Triangle? Ever since they lost their World Trios champion, Pac just disappeared. Could we see Pac joining that list of wrestlers that have been gone for a while with Miro, Thunder Rosa? Who else? CM Punk? CM Punk. AEW Collision could happen in less than a month. Maybe that could be a huge announcement. Maybe we could have a streaming service coming up. Maybe through the HBO streaming service. Maybe through the Showtime. We don't know. Maybe we'll get a streaming service on top of that. Maybe we'll get a humongous signing that will change the landscape. No, I don't think it'll be The Undertaker. Maybe we'll get Goldberg. Maybe. We need a caliber star-studded card for All In in Wembley Stadium. Okay? We need a marquee name for the event. Now, can we have, and I know we're leaning away the conversation, the topic for next week, but maybe this could put things in play leading up to All In. And FTR and CM Punk versus the Elite. Maybe. Which we'll talk about that shortly. Maybe we'll get a Goldberg. As he mentioned, Goldberg mentioned that he could have a small tour of a farewell tour across the world. One more time across the world, say his goodbyes. Hell, Wembley Stadium could be a good stop to have a match. Maybe with the Icon Sting. Woo! Showtime. Maybe we could get Sting versus Goldberg one more time. Again, a fantasy wrestling fan booker here. We're just talking about fantasies here. Get your mind out of the gutter. Yeah. Anything could happen between now and August with All In, which could make a play within this new TV show and this potential announcement next Wednesday in Dynamite. Maybe all of this could be wrong. Maybe Tony Khan announced maybe they'll have a new world championship like the other company, and we'll have a triple threat tournament on Dynamite and Rampage. We don't know. That'll be interesting because we will have, with Collision, we would have Dynamite on Wednesday. You think about it. Rampage on Friday. A Collision on Saturday. They need to put something on Thursday. Thursday night thunderstorm. You can't say thunder, right? We don't know. But as of right now, we're going to stick with my Collision. Again, everybody else around the world knows about this, okay? But again, I'm going to go with my prediction as well, along with everybody else. A new TV show will be announced on Dynamite next Wednesday, along with a potential debut. Okay? Goldberg could be one of them. Who else is a hot free agent that could show up in AEW and change the landscape? Okay? We're not going to pull The Undertaker, The Rock, Stone Cold. It's wild. It's wild. Batista. Who else is free agent that will shatter the pro wrestling ceiling? Who? We don't know. Again, the Roderick Strong was a little quiet. That surprised me because he was in NXT for a little bit, and his release was quiet, and he showed up in AEW television. So maybe we'll have another quiet release in the WWE that could shatter the wrestling landscape. We don't know. But as right now, the television is the only thing that's on the mind that could change the landscape and could change things up in AEW, which could help, right? Right? And there was a leaked, and I don't know who has the official, the official person that kind of released this online, so I can't give them credit. But if you could look it up, if it's still up on social media, on Twitter, there's a official do not leak, I don't know if this is real or not, of the talent card backstage. And it showed Nigel McGuinness, Jim Ross as official producers backstage. And they were showed the official roster for the new Collide, which is CM Punk, FTR, Chris Jericho. I forgot who else was on there. But it showed an official list and backstage talent, backstage producers, which it looks pretty damn good, man. Like, man, I actually could look forward to watching this. And not like Dynamite is bad sometimes. I mean, sometimes it can get bad. Okay? There's Wednesdays, it just, I just, maybe like, man, this show sucked this week. And I'll be honest with you, because I'm a big fan of AEW, but I can tell you there's certain shows that sucked. But I'm pretty sure there's WWE fans that are, yeah, I agree. No, you're not off the hook here, because Raw, 3 hours, man, that crap drains me sometimes, okay? So that's why there's times I fast forward. That's why I DVR Raw sometimes. Because, man, oh man, it drains my soul out of me, baby. So, okay, that's the first topic. Let's talk about the second topic. The main event of Dynamite, which was a steel cage between Kenny Omega versus the Boogeyman, Jon Moxley. So the match was a hell of a match. Now let's talk about the intro of the match, okay? Before the match started. Both men were in a cage. Okay? The match hasn't started. We have the Blackpool Combat Club coming out, heading towards the cage, trying to interfere in the match before the match started. Then the Young Bucks came out, trying to even the score. Next thing you know, it was a big brawl outside of the cage between both factions. Felt like all the tension was on them for the first 5 minutes before the match started. Now, this brawl between the Young Bucks and the Blackpool Combat Club, is it necessary? I'm going to ask you, the viewers and listeners, was that spot necessary? Now, hear me out here. They could use this spot later on in the match, which we'll talk about it shortly. But my personal opinion, this spot was not necessary. Okay, again, maybe somebody feels different about it, but it's not necessary for me. Let's talk about the match. It's a steel cage match. It was brutal. It was gruel. It was everything about the kitchen sink, because you had shard glass, you had a barbed wire wrapped chair, you had a little bit of everything. Both men went through a cage. I mean, as what I mentioned, as the cage link snapped, and both men went through the cage, which was insane. Insane. That caught my attention. This whole match caught my attention. With both men going through the glass. You know, you get your typical black bag. Oh, what's in there? Thumbtacks. And you dump in a shard glass. Okay? Watching each other going through it, just, man, it put chills down my spine as a viewer at home. Like, I can't imagine putting my back through a shard glass. And look, if I drop a cup at home, a glass cup at home, I'm like, oh man, I need some gloves. I need to get a broom and a dustpan. Like, I don't want to touch this. I want to cut myself. These guys will slam the crap out of each other through the damn glass. God bless them. I don't know how they can do it. And what's unique about this main event match is you get a style. Both styles, Jon Moxley, yeah, man, I'm hardcore. I'm going to bleed. Jon Moxley hardcore style. That's his style. Yeah, Kenny Omega, who has that New Japan, high spot, fast pace, quick moving, intense moves, style matches. He does. We know how Kenny Omega matches go. 5-star New Japan Pro Wrestling Okada style matches. We know how these matches goes. You put that style and the Jon Moxley style together, makes it unique, makes it different. You put two style of pro wrestling styles from both men clash together in one ring, makes it unique, makes it different. A side of Kenny Omega we don't see, which is the hardcore side of Kenny Omega. It's nice to see Kenny Omega on the hardcore side every once in a while. Do I want to see Kenny Omega in a hardcore style match all the time? Not really. But I do enjoy it every once in a while, as I mentioned. Him and Jon Moxley, just like the barbed wire death match with a crappy ending. The barbed wire death match a few years ago, that was a hell of a match. And don't get me wrong, as I mentioned numerous times, Kenny Omega is not a hardcore style wrestler. But when you dip him in different styles to different wrestling matches, it makes it unique. It makes it stands out. And that's why I enjoyed this match a lot. Okay? It was violent, it was brutal, and it had everything about the kitchen sink. Now, let's talk about the ending of the main event. Okay? So, you have the cage link broken open. It's exposed. Anybody could get in the ring now. Well, you had Kenny Omega. I'm trying to remember how the match ended. If Jon Moxley had like a chokehold on Omega. I don't know. I can't remember how it concluded, but it was at the point where Mox had Kenny Omega. He had him in the ring. Don Callis got in the ring with a screwdriver. Now, at first, in my mind, okay, Don Callis got into the ring because, as I mentioned, the chain link fence from the cage broke open. He hopped in. He's going to stab Jon Moxley in the head. Here's the opportunity to free up Kenny Omega from this hold. No. That didn't happen. What happened was Don Callis stabbed, I repeat, stabbed Kenny Omega in the head. Yes, I just said that. Don Callis, the manager of the Elite, his fellow Canadian native, try to say that twice, Kenny Omega's best friend, Don Callis, stabbed Kenny Omega in the head with the screwdriver. And the reaction of the crowd, including to myself, I'm like, what? He just stabbed Kenny Omega in the head with a screwdriver. And that's where everything started to change. Now, I mentioned about the brawl between the Blackpool Combat Club and the Elite prior to the match. I'm going to ask you, the viewers and listeners, where were the Young Bucks when Don Callis stabbed Kenny Omega in the face? Okay? Think about it. Why did they come out and save Kenny Omega? Why didn't they come out and confront Don Callis and say, dude, you double-crossed us. What's your problem? Why didn't the Blackpool Combat Club come out? Why couldn't they use that spot prior to the match and moved it towards the end? Make it a little chaos. Make it a major exploding ending. Now, it was exploding enough that Don Callis walked out with a screwdriver in his hand, stabbing his former best friend in the face, and walking out with a big smile on his face. That was good. What they could have made it better was have the Young Bucks come out, and the Blackpool Combat Club came out, beat the living hell out of them, and they all standing there with their hands in the air with a big victory to close out Dynamite. Makes you want to know what next week's Dynamite's going to be. What's Elite gonna do next Wednesday? Since this major tournament events happen, it's just some of the things you have in your mind, wondering where were the Young Bucks? Were they backstage, still fighting the Blackpool Combat Club? Were they back there packing the crap up, leaving the arena? Some of the things were on my mind. Where were they when Kenny Omega was getting stabbed in the face by Don Callis, their former manager, joining the dark side? So, very interesting turn of events on Dynamite in the main event. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to ask you, the viewers on YouTube, leave it in the comments section. Let me know what you think about those two events or the whole Dynamite on TBS. Same thing with on podcasts. As I mentioned, available on all major podcast outlets. Into the Squared Circle podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Send me a DM. Let me know what you guys think about these events. Okay? All right. I'm going to shut up. I'll talk to you guys in a few days. We'll talk about SmackDown is coming Friday and Rampage on Saturday. A special edition of Rampage on Saturday. And other things on pro wrestling across, like New Japan and whatnot. And we shoot the shit, right? We'll talk about it. I'll see what's going on in the world of pro wrestling this weekend. All right, my friends. I'll talk to you guys later on.